The Turin Shroud is so iconic because it represents what might be the only physical, tangible proof of Jesus Christ.
I think we can be certain that this is the burial wrapping of Jesus.
For more than 600 years, it has waited. Locked behind glass inside a cathedral in Turin, the linen cloth known as the Shroud has drawn millions of eyes, yet answered no one. Some say it wrapped the body of a crucified man 2,000 years ago.
Wow, that's a tremendous blow to everybody who thought that the shroud might be real.
Others insist it is a medieval hoax created to inspire faith or manipulate power. Scientists tested it. Theologians debated it.
This is the more big mystery, if you want to call it in this way, in the sense that a lot of scientists tried in this last 1 century.
Artists tried to replicate it. None of them succeeded. It is not just an artifact. It is a confrontation between what we know and what we fear might be true.
Is it possible that this 14-foot-long linen cloth captured the greatest paranormal event of all time?
Now, for the first time, AI has seen what no human could, and what it uncovered has left even the experts very afraid to speak. Origins and first appearance. For those who have stood in front of it, the experience is difficult to explain. It is not bold. It is not bright. It does not scream for attention. Instead, it waits. Stretched flat under thick glass inside a climate-controlled chamber in the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist in Turin, Italy, rests a linen cloth measuring 14 feet in length and just over 3 feet in width.
The Shroud of Turin is a 14-foot-long linen cloth. It's 3.5 feet wide. It's made out of flax.
At first glance, the fabric appears yellowed and ancient, marked by faint discoloration and age. But as the eyes adjust, an image begins to form. Slowly and unmistakably, the shape of a man appears across its surface. His face, ghostly and full, stares forward with a stillness that many describe as human and lifeless at the same time. The cloth did not always rest behind bulletproof glass. Its first recorded appearance occurred in a small church in the village of Lirey, France, during the middle of the 14th century. No one knows how it arrived there. A French knight named Geoffroy de Charny is believed to have been its first public custodian. When the cloth was displayed, crowds gathered to see it.
From April 19th to the 24th of next year, the Holy Shroud will be on display as part of an exhibit.
Many fell to their knees, and others cried. Word spread quickly, and pilgrims began traveling long distances to witness the strange image on linen that appeared to depict a crucified man. But almost immediately, the relic caused division. Some church officials angrily questioned its authenticity and called for investigation. Others warned it could be a forgery. A bishop even wrote to the Pope suggesting that the cloth had been painted by an artist for the purpose of deception. The Vatican did not immediately take a public stance, which left the debate open. Over time, the shroud passed into the hands of one of the most powerful noble families in Europe, the House of Savoy. They held it for generations. In the year 1578, they moved the shroud to Turin, where it remains to this day. Since the 17th century, it has been housed in the cathedral and rarely moved. It survived a fire in the year 1532, which left burn marks and water stains. It was hidden during times of war. It was rescued again during the Second World War when bombs fell nearby. Through every danger and disaster, it was protected. The connection to Scripture has never been ignored. In the Gospel of John, chapter 20, verses 5 through 7, it says that Peter entered the tomb and saw the linen cloths lying there. It also says the cloth that had been on Jesus' head was not lying with the other linen cloths, but was folded and placed separately. The shroud precisely fits that biblical description. Even more disturbing are the injuries shown on the image. The man appears to have wounds in his wrists, not his palms.
The man's skin appears to be dark, while the shadows his limbs cast appear to be light, as if the image were a photographic negative.
Which matches the actual method used during Roman crucifixions. There are bloodstains on the feet and across one side of the torso, which line up with the detail from the Gospel of John that says Jesus was pierced in the side by a Roman spear after death. The shroud's presence has challenged science and inspired worship, but its arrival in history was never peaceful. Dark theories across the ages. From the moment it appeared, the shroud stirred division, suspicion, and relentless investigation. In the 14th century, Bishop Henry of Troyes condemned it as a fraud. He accused the clergy at Liray Church, where the shroud was first displayed.
There, they got to see the Holy Shroud. He says it had a major impact on those who saw it, and they were extremely grateful for the opportunity.
Of promoting a man-made image to deceive pilgrims and raise money for their chapel. His accusation was not isolated. Even as pilgrims traveled to venerate the cloth, critics demanded proof. What was this strange image? And how did it come to exist? Secular theories surged forward over the centuries. Some said the image was painted. Others believed it had been seared onto the linen by fire, or contact with a hot statue. A few pushed the idea that it was created through early photography using a method known as the camera obscura. But each of these theories collapsed under scrutiny. There are no pigments, brush strokes, burn residue, or heat damage on the shroud. Microscopic analysis also found no traces of any known artistic technique. If this was a forgery, how was it done in an age without modern chemistry or imaging? Then came the turning point in 1898. Italian photographer Secondo Pia took the first official photograph of the shroud. When he developed the negative plate, the result was terrifying. What had once looked like a faint, ghostly stain became a detailed, lifelike, three-dimensional image. A face stared back, full of depth and definition.
It means that the flat two-dimensional image on the shroud is intended to be viewed in 3 dimensions.
Scientists and theologians were stunned. How could a medieval artist have created an image that only revealed its full form through photographic inversion, a process that would not be discovered for another 6 centuries? If the shroud was a fake, then its creator had somehow predicted a technology that did not yet exist. That should not have been possible by any known means of the time. Yet doubt did not die. In 1988, 3 leading laboratories in Oxford, Zurich, and Arizona performed carbon dating tests. The results dated the cloth to between 1,260 and 1,390. If accurate, this would mean the shroud was created over 1,000 years after the crucifixion of Jesus.
The Shroud of Turin is believed to be the actual burial cloth of Jesus of Nazareth.
And that would immediately make it a medieval forgery. Headlines around the world called it a proven fake. But within months, experts raised objections. They argued the tested samples came from a repaired corner of the cloth, not the original weave. Others pointed to contamination from centuries of handling, fire, and microbial growth that could have altered the results. As time passed, more evidence began to surface. Pollens found on the cloth matched plants native to Jerusalem and regions around the Dead Sea. The linen's weave pattern, a complex herringbone style, was consistent with first-century Middle Eastern burial cloths. Within theological circles, the artifact provoked even deeper arguments. Some saw it as evidence of the resurrection and a sacred relic bearing witness to Christ's return from death. Others viewed it as a dangerous distraction from Scripture, warning that any image could lead to idolatry. If God had intended a portrait of Jesus to survive, would it not be mentioned clearly in the Bible? Despite centuries of research, no one could explain how the image formed. No one could prove who made it. The mystery remained. And then something changed. In the 21st century, technology caught up with faith. The battlefield shifted once again. Artificial intelligence had entered the search, and what it found would break every assumption. Morai's stunning revelation. For centuries, believers and skeptics stood on opposite sides of a mystery that would not die. Then came Cicero Morais. A Brazilian digital designer known for forensic facial reconstructions, Morais turned his attention to the Shroud of Turin, but unlike others before him, he brought something new. He used powerful 3D simulation software powered by artificial intelligence. What he found shook the foundation of the Shroud's mystery. Morais wanted to answer a simple question. Could the image on the Shroud have formed by being wrapped around a real human body? Or was there another explanation? He fed precise digital data into the AI. It generated 2 simulations. In the first, the Shroud was shown draped over a real human corpse. The result was immediately suspicious. The facial structure appeared unnaturally long. The nose was distorted.
Because the nose is the high point, and it forms a pyramid. But what I found was a nose that was somewhat shorter than the nose on the Shroud.
The image stretched in ways that did not match anatomical reality. The cloth clearly warped over the curves of the human form. Then Morais tested something else. He simulated the same cloth laid over a low-relief sculpture. The change was dramatic. The image aligned nearly perfectly. The proportions looked natural. There was no strange stretching. Everything fit. According to the data, the Shroud made more sense if it had been pressed onto a carved surface, not wrapped around a body. This finding carried a powerful implication. If the image had been created by a sculpted object, then it may not have been a burial cloth at all. It may have been designed to imitate one. Medieval Europe was full of religious relics, both genuine and forged. Sculpted icons of saints, bones placed in gold cases, and sacred items passed off as holy were not unusual. Morais' results pointed toward a similar path. The Shroud might be one of the most brilliant forgeries in history, created with tools far ahead of their time. His findings even seemed to align with the 1988 carbon dating, which placed the cloth's origin in the 13th to 14th century. For a brief moment, it looked as if the mystery had been solved. Skeptics jumped on Morais' findings, claiming they had been right all along. Some mocked believers directly. One wrote, "It took a small computer to expose blind faith. Silly." Others said this finally proved the Shroud was not divine, but man-made. It was an embarrassing moment for those who had defended it for years.
This isn't necessarily hard, undeniable proof of the resurrection, which is what the Christian faith hangs on.
But just Morais appeared to close the case. Another researcher opened a shocking one. McAvoy's AI analysis. Thomas McAvoy, an independent researcher with a background in data science, took a completely different approach. Unlike earlier studies that tried to explain the Shroud by examining the cloth's surface for pigments, paint, dyes, or signs of physical contact, McAvoy focused on the material substance of the image. He instructed AI to analyze only the digital structure of the image itself. Through principal component analysis, the AI isolated what carried the most visual weight in the image.
Because what you're seeing in the Shroud of Turin is not a picture of a face. It's a database of information.
To his shock, it turned out to be neither pigment nor texture, but something entirely different: intensity. This referred to the exact lightness and darkness at every point across the Shroud. When the AI processed this data, it behaved as if it were analyzing a 3-dimensional object, not a flat, painted surface. The way the intensity values varied across the cloth resembled a depth map, as if the image had been created by some kind of energy, interacting with the body to produce depth and contour.
I have absolutely no doubt the person depicted on this cloth is Jesus of Nazareth.
This result took McAvoy completely by surprise, because it defied the logic of any known artistic or printing technique. What made the finding even more difficult to dismiss was the microscopic behavior of the image on the cloth. Under high magnification, researchers found that only the very surface of the linen fibers had been affected. Each individual thread of linen is about 10 to 15 microns thick, which is thinner than a single human hair. Yet only the top 2 to 3 microns showed any change in color. This means that whatever formed the image never penetrated into the fibers the way paint, ink, or dye normally would. There were no particles trapped in the weave, no signs of brush strokes, no fluid residue, and no absorbed materials. Instead, the fibers were simply discolored on their outermost layer, in a way that was consistent and extraordinarily precise.
When you consider that there are no substances on the cloth that were conceivably used by an artist.
This kind of surface-only change is so subtle and controlled that even today's tools and methods struggle to reproduce it artificially. For McAvoy and others reviewing the data, the conclusion became unavoidable. Whatever formed the image on the shroud did not behave like any known human-made substance or technique. McAvoy proposed that the image may have been formed by a brief and intense burst of energy, possibly radiation. Nothing else explained the shallow but highly detailed discoloration. For the first time, artificial intelligence exposed something that could not be explained by human hands. The book of Isaiah had described the suffering of the Messiah in vivid terms. He was pierced for our transgressions. The shroud bore the marks, the wrists, the side, the crown. If Moraes hinted at medieval genius, McAvoy pointed to something else.
You can see clearly the face here, the crossed hands, and here are the scourge marks. It's a photograph of the moment.
A burst of something unknown, unrepeatable, and possibly unearthly.
One of the world's greatest unsolved mysteries, the Shroud of Turin.
A relic that behaves like a phenomenon. In the world of science, physical objects usually follow predictable rules. Paint behaves like paint. Burn marks look like burns. Artifacts are shaped by human hands or nature. But the Shroud of Turin does not fit any of these categories.
He brought up the Shroud of Turin, and I always thought that was fake. It was like in the 80s.
What is that, Eddie?
The shroud, it's like the cloth that Jesus was buried in and left an image of him.
Instead, it shows behavior that scientists say looks more like a natural event or a physical phenomenon than something made by hand. This changes the entire conversation. Artificial intelligence detected highly structured patterns in the image. Around the chest, jawline, and hands, the image was not random or chaotic. It was symmetrical. It followed a hidden order. This matters because random burns or stains would never organize themselves into such clean, repeating formations. This type of symmetry suggests something intelligent or energetic, not accidental. The implication is that the image might not have been made by an artist, but by a process we do not yet understand. Researchers have quietly begun to describe the shroud in new terms. Some have said, off the record, that it behaves like a phenomenon, not an artifact. This is a major shift in how the shroud is understood.
The image is darker here, more contrasty than what the real shroud is.
If it behaves like a phenomenon, then it is not just an object to be studied. It is an event to be decoded. The image does not match anything known in art history or physical science. The discoloration on the shroud detected by AI appears similar to a scorch mark, but it is too shallow, too uniform, and too precise to have come from fire. It does not penetrate the cloth like a normal burn would. This implies that the discoloration may have come from a different type of energy altogether. This raises the possibility of an unknown physical force. Theories have emerged. Some have suggested a burst of radiation. Others have mentioned plasma discharge. A few have floated the idea of lost technology, something ancient, but far beyond what was known in medieval or Roman times. If the shroud image was formed by such a powerful force, then what could have produced it? The energy required would have been enormous. And if that energy existed, why do we not see signs of it anywhere else?
There have been questions about the veracity of this image ever since its first documented appearance in the late 14th century.
To some physicists, the shroud's behavior feels strangely familiar. It mirrors what we see in quantum anomalies, like the cosmic microwave background radiation. This is the invisible afterglow of the Big Bang, still visible in space today. Like that radiation, the shroud may be the visible result of an invisible event. If this theory is correct, the shroud might be the physical imprint of a moment in history we cannot fully understand. Something happened that left a real, measurable effect, but the cause remains hidden. This would make the shroud one of the rarest kinds of evidence in the world, a visible trace of an invisible moment. But if this was energy, what kind of energy are we talking about? And what kind of event could leave behind an image that still defies all known science? The next revelation pushes the limits of both science and belief. Resurrection as energy. For centuries, theologians have debated the meaning of the shroud, but with the rise of modern science and the explosive findings from AI, a new interpretation has emerged. Some experts now believe the shroud may be more than a burial cloth. It could be the physical aftershock of a supernatural event, like the resurrection of Jesus Christ. In Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 15, verse 52, he wrote, "In a flash, in the twinkling of an eye, the dead will be raised imperishable." This verse has long been interpreted as metaphor. But what if Paul was describing a literal energetic burst? What if the resurrection involved not just spiritual transformation, but physical release of energy so extreme that it left an imprint on the cloth that wrapped the body? If true, the shroud could be the residual echo of that moment. The alignment of the shroud's features with Jewish burial practices supports this possibility. According to the Gospel of John, Jesus was buried with spices, including myrrh and aloe. Chemical traces consistent with those substances have been detected on the shroud.
For those of you who don't know what the Shroud of Turin is, the Shroud of Turin is the purported burial cloth of our Lord, of Jesus.
Adding credibility to the claim that this cloth came from a first-century Jewish burial. This link strengthens the idea that the shroud is not just religious art, but a legitimate historical artifact from that specific culture and time. Still, the core question remains: does the shroud prove the resurrection, or does it only mirror the story told in Scripture? Here lies the theological tension. Some scholars see the shroud as evidence of divine power. Others worry that calling it proof of the resurrection turns faith into spectacle. The Catholic Church itself has remained cautious. It permits veneration of the shroud, even encourages prayer before it, but has never officially declared it to be authentic or miraculous. That silence speaks volumes. This divide runs deep. For every theologian who views the shroud as a sacred relic, another warns that it could become a distraction. If faith is based on evidence alone, they argue, it loses its spiritual core. Some have even compared the intense focus on the shroud to the biblical warning against idol worship. Could the image on the linen be a blessing or a temptation? Yet, the shroud refuses to fade into irrelevance. With each new test and every layer of analysis, it draws fresh attention. The suggestion that it may have been created by a flash of energy that encoded itself onto linen is both terrifying and awe-inspiring. If this theory is correct, the resurrection was not just an event of belief, it was a phenomenon of physics. But what AI discovered next is even stranger. What I wasn't supposed to see. When artificial intelligence was first used to study the Shroud of Turin, scientists expected it to find flaws or natural patterns that might explain the image.
Inspired a new artificial intelligence image of Jesus. This image, based on the face of Jesus in the shroud.
Instead, it uncovered something deeply unsettling. The AI began to detect patterns that did not behave like art or stains. They behaved like something else entirely, something designed to carry information. Using high-resolution scans, researchers fed the shroud into systems that analyze images in different ways. They applied ultraviolet light, thermal imaging, and digital filters that separate out layers of contrast and shape. In doing so, the AI detected repeating structures hidden beneath the surface details. These structures were symmetrical and consistent across the cloth.
The image in the cloth could not be created through physical contact using a low-relief sculpture.
Especially around the chest, jawline, forehead, and hands. At first, some scientists believed these might be fabric folds or distortions from age, but the software flagged them as too precise. The spacing and alignment followed specific geometric principles. Some lines matched the golden ratio, a mathematical pattern found in natural growth, classical architecture, and religious art. These were not random. They followed a structure. One researcher suggested it was a digital artifact, a glitch in how the AI saw the image. But others disagreed. A physicist who reviewed the results called it terrifying, not because it was supernatural, but because it did not fit any category the system had been trained on. It was not a painting. It was not a photograph. It was not a burn. Yet it was clearly made with precision. This led to a new idea. What if the shroud is not just an image? What if it is a signal? Not a visual representation made for the eye, but a structured imprint created for something to decode. That kind of pattern would not be made by accident. It would require intention and possibly a level of knowledge far ahead of its time. The implication was staggering. The AI treated parts of the shroud the way it would treat biometric scans or encoded messages, not historical artifacts. The system flagged certain zones as non-organic anomalies, which means they did not behave like cloth, skin, or blood.
You find a few fascinating details, like a blood wound on his left wrist, which appears light because the photo was taken as a negative.
They behaved like information. This changed the question entirely. The debate was no longer about whether the shroud was real or fake. It had become something else. If this was a signal, who sent it? And even more importantly, who was it meant for? By now, scientists and theologians were no longer just dealing with a mysterious image. They were facing something that crossed every known boundary. The shroud had stopped behaving like a relic. It had become a challenge to everything we thought we understood about history, technology, and belief. A mystery that sees back. The more advanced our tools become, the less certain we are about what we are looking at. Artificial intelligence was supposed to clear up the confusion. Instead, it did something no one expected. It stripped away human assumptions, removed layers of tradition, and forced the shroud to speak for itself. What came through was not a clear explanation. It was a deeper mystery. The Shroud of Turin cannot be boxed into any known category.
The shroud, it's like the cloth that Jesus was buried in and left an image of him.
It is not a traditional artifact. It is not a painting. It does not behave like a forgery. Scientists cannot replicate it. Theologians cannot claim it without reservation. Even skeptics now admit it defies the usual patterns. It sits in the space between everything we know and everything we still cannot explain. Some now call it a mirror of the resurrection. Others describe it as a cosmic glitch, an imprint of a moment that does not fit within natural history. One idea keeps resurfacing. What if the shroud was never meant to be understood? What if it was left behind not to prove something, but to disrupt everything? There are experts who now say it looks like a fingerprint, not of a person, but of an event, like a burst of order stamped onto fabric by a force outside time. Scientists call it a disruption. Theologians call it a sign. Skeptics call it a riddle. And yet all three are now staring at the same image, asking the same question.
Because the image is actually over top of the blood stains, and it's on the fibrils of the linen, only at the very tips of the linen. And so they did tests on this.
The world has changed, but the shroud continues to draw people in. Millions still visit. They come with belief, doubt, hope, or fear, but they keep coming. And they leave with more questions than they arrived with. Artificial intelligence has done something no human has ever done before. It looked deep into the shroud, and in doing so, it may have triggered something unexpected. Because what AI found was not just data, it was something that stared back. This is no longer just a debate over cloth. It is a question of what is possible. And the shroud is no longer silent. It is asking us the question we never thought to ask. What if it was never made for us to solve? What do you think about the shroud? Feel free to share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Want more videos like this? Then subscribe to the channel for more eye-opening stories. Thank you so much for staying with us till the end. See you in the next video.